Day 271 of 1,461 Days of Ignoring the Trump Administration. I am not a self-help guru. I'm just trying to help myself. Today is the second No King's Day protest, and the word is that it will be the largest protest in American history. Without getting into the fear that has been espoused by the leader of the Trump administration and the Trump administration, who would rather have a one king day, we want a king day, or a Don King day. By the way, we already have a Don King, and I'm pretty satisfied with that one. I wanted to mention that the No King's Day logo reminds me of Jean-Michel Basquiat and his iconic crown image, which in turn reminds me that those "we want a King Day" people don't understand art, and they don't understand artists. Because if they did, they would understand us. Their idea of art is Kid Rock, and that reminded me that I own the second Kid Rock CD. I was DJing at a college radio station in my late teens, and a free copy was sent to us. The reason I kept it is because Kid Rock sampled Howard Stern on one of the songs, and I have listened to Howard Stern since I was a teenager. Kid Rock sampled something Howard said to someone that he was having a fight with on the air. Howard said, "You want my in your mouth." Now, whatever you think of Howard, that's another issue. But what is interesting to me, and what backs up this point I have about not understanding art and artists, and how Kid Rock never understood art and still doesn't, is how Kid Rock used that sample to demean the women he is attempting to humiliate in this song. Howard was having a fight with a man, not a woman, and meant it playfully in the context of an on-air bit to make his listeners laugh, not to make the listener fearful that he might sexually assault them. Howard said this as an outrageous insult to someone who was attacking him, and again, someone who was not a woman, not a minority, and not vulnerable, whereas Kid Rock took that sample and used it in a way that was only meant to humiliate, belittle, and intimidate. Unlike Howard, Kid Rock wants to stifle laughter with a boot to the neck. Now that is what people who would like to see the leader of the Trump administration as a king, which is how he sees himself, want. There is nothing artful about that. Be safe out there today during your No King's Day observation. You'll be celebrating Jean-Michel and even Don King while you're ignoring the Trump administration. Day 272 of 1,461 Days of Ignoring the Trump Administration. I am not a self-help guru. I'm just trying to help myself. UFC White House is an upcoming mixed martial arts event produced by the Ultimate Fighting Championship that will take place on June 14, 2026 on the White House lawn. Yes, this is real, and I am fine with it, because to me, that means there will eventually be drag shows, for instance, on the White House lawn. And that is what America is all about. Unfortunately, the pendulum is currently swung so far right that the left must simply look and shrug our shoulders and hope for a better day when we can feel represented more fully by the people in power again. And while I don't feel like a drag show necessarily represents me, a drag show existing absolutely does. And in a very bizarre way, the UFC mixed martial arts event at the White House represents me as well, because it also doesn't necessarily represent me. How a group of people can say that a drag show is indoctrinating kids into a lifestyle and not say that mixed martial arts is indoctrinating kids into a lifestyle is bizarre to me, and I believe that the majority of the country would agree that it is bizarre. It is only the extreme among us that think in these stark opposing ways, but unfortunately the extreme have the loudest voices right now, because the middle is out here just trying to survive and trying to get done what we have to get done. Now, you might say, Josh, where is this tolerant attitude when it comes to the leader of the Trump administration and the Trump administration? Maybe it is time for you to adjust your attitude, to recalculate, to recalibrate, and find some acceptance for this man? Well, I hear what you're saying. But the answer to that is no. And the reason is because when it comes down to talking about specific people, in this case, Donald Trump, and yes, I use his name very rarely, but I use it right now to make clear that my thoughts and feelings and beliefs in regard to tolerance are different. When it comes to this very specific human being, I just think Donald Trump is a dick. I've said it before. In fact, I have a feeling that the leader of the Trump administration himself would shrug his shoulders just like I shrugged mine moments ago and say, some people do think I'm a dick. I appreciate you for not going into detail. I hope the leader enjoys next summer's mixed martial arts demonstration. Until RuPaul shows up at the White House, I will enjoy ignoring the Trump administration. Day 273 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I'm just trying to help myself. Have you seen that the White House is being torn down? Well, if you haven't, don't bother because it doesn't matter anyway. It's not unexpected from the leader of the Trump administration and the Trump administration to continue to rampage through the institutions of our country, including the physical destruction of the White House itself. I have a hot take on this that may disagree with many of the hot takes that are out there, and many of the hot takes that are out there are absolutely legitimate. But my hot take is tear it the fuck down and play burning down the house by the talking heads while you're doing it. I say this because of how that house was actually built. White people did not build that White House, if you know what I mean. It was built by the labor of enslaved people. So, symbolically, while we may be holding onto it like we have held onto so many institutions in our very young time as a nation, as I have said all along throughout 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration, they will take us to the bottom, and that is precisely where they are continuing to take us. They are taking us to the bottom and exposing the rot of how this nation was created and formed. This reveals the truth to all who are willing to look, and soon to all that are not willing to take a look, because the rot will be stinking so hard in your face that you will not be able to keep from smelling it. The actual reality of our existence in this country and in the bigger picture as human beings can only be experienced through exposure to our actual selves and the actual people we live amongst and the actual realities of what it means to be a person who can make choices about the kind of life we want to live, the kind of character we want to be in the world, and the kind of way we want to interact and treat other people. Only then can we realize the best versions of ourselves, which allows us to help others achieve the best versions of themselves. There is no saving the leader of the Trump administration and the Trump administration. These are people who have sold themselves out to what they believe is the best version of the life that they want to live. That is their choice. But it is not my choice to abide by the rot that they want to infect my future with. So go ahead and go forward with your White House desecration. I will continue to stand by and ignore the Trump administration. Day 274 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I am just trying to help myself. If you need a starting point to debate your right-wing friend or family member that you have yet to give up on, the latest episode of the Al Franken podcast is with the comedian, writer, and political commentator John Fugelsang, who speaks eloquently as someone who grew up with a mother who was a nun, about how right-wing Christians completely ignore Jesus Christ in their words and deeds. I can't say I could walk away from listening to this excellent episode being able to point to specific examples of hypocrisy if I were to engage in an argument. But I could definitely point back to this episode in which John Fugelsang points out specific examples of hypocrisy. I grew up with Al Franken in my life because I was a kid who watched Saturday Night Live, and Al Franken was one of its writers. Al Franken, like me, is also a Jew who did not learn Hebrew and was not bar mitzvahed because we were already disinterested in religion by that age, but we were interested in politics and how religion plays into politics. So, it is easy for me to understand why the leader of the Trump administration, when asked to quote a Bible verse, says it's too personal to quote. And then, when asked if he prefers the Old Testament to the New Testament, says equal. He says those things because he has no idea what's in the Bible and couldn't care less. He's only annoyed that you're asking him about it. Even if he took the time to learn what was in there, he would quickly realize it goes against the behavior and the words and the deeds that he wishes to use and employ until his last breath. I would venture to guess, based on the behavior of the rest of the Trump administration and many of the followers of the Trump administration, that they do not want to know what is actually in the book that they claim to base their lives around either. This being said, I understand why someone would want to base their lives around some hypocritical identification. We all need a path, and my path includes ignoring the Trump administration. Day 275 of 1,461 Days of Ignoring the Trump Administration. I am not a self-help guru. I'm just trying to help myself. Commenter Colonel Dingus says, ignoring. Bwah ha 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 ha. Now, this comment was followed by a second comment by Colonel Dingus that leads me to believe that while Colonel Dingus may have issues with my content, he is spending so much time on the battlefield with my content that at this point I would have to say that I have become literally an obsession for the Colonel. Now, I had to stop and look up what it takes to reach the rank of Colonel, but before I did, I had to assume that a Colonel is not someone who should be spending their time making comments on TikTok, especially when that Colonel is of the age where I suspect someone should want to aspire to a more patriotic use of their time. After I completed my research, I found that to reach the rank of Colonel, you have to put more than 2 decades into the military. And so there is no other conclusion one can make other than that Colonel Dingus has been busting his ass for many years to reach the rank of Colonel. And I want to say that I encourage Colonel Dingus to continue his pursuit, which I would assume would mean eventually reaching the rank of General Dingus, which is the highest rank that you can achieve in the military. Now that we have this connection, Colonel Dingus, I was wondering if you could use your influence and power to do me a favor. I am an admirer of one of the military's most revered servants. He is known as Captain Crunch. I am a massive fan of the flavors peanut butter Captain Crunch and also one of his greatest achievements, Crunch Berries. Perhaps you could let me know if the captain is planning any other flavors that he could recruit me for. I hope I am using the language in a way that a military man such as yourself can appreciate. While I am thinking of it, please also express my appreciation of his work to the captain of Captain and Tennille. Love will keep us together, Colonel Dingus. Thank you for your service. The armed forces are lucky for your participation. Please continue to ignore the Trump administration. Day 276 of 1,461 Days of Ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I'm just trying to help myself. Commenter Faden, spelled with a PH, which a music insider like myself recognizes as an indicator that this young lady is a mega fan of the psychedelic jam ensemble named Fish, says, all that research, ... and you couldn't get his name right? Well, I don't mean to start some static with you, Faden, but as someone who enjoyed his work as a child and still does today, I am well aware of the name Captain Crunch and his incredibly delicious cereal. And so I am not sure exactly what it is you are trying to imply here. Perhaps because I am more of a fan of the Grateful Dead than I am of your favorite band, Fish, maybe you feel like you need to pick some kind of trippy argument with me. But you do not have to, because when it comes to the jam band experience, it's all love. Who is your favorite member of Fish, Faden? Let me guess. It's Trey Anastasio, right? What is your favorite Fish song? I bet it's You Enjoy Myself. See, I know a little bit about your world, ma'am. We're not so different after all. Now, that said, I personally am not into blowing up balloons and inhaling them like you Fish fans seem to like to do, but I do not hold it against you. It is your choice. For instance, back in the 90s, if the leader of the Trump administration was doing his two-fisted jerk dance while looking at young lady Fish fans down there at Mar-a-Lago while hanging out with his best friend Jeff, that would have been his choice. I wouldn't know anything about that because, like I said, I was minding my business and enjoying a nice bowl of crunch berries, and I hope you will accept that story as proof, Faden, that I would never incorrectly use the name Captain Crunch. I stand by my research and this explanation. Thank you for your comment and for ignoring the Trump administration. Day 277 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I'm just trying to help myself. We have now entered the end of our teens. Do you remember when you were 19 and you thought to yourself, uh-oh, this is the last year of being a teenager and next year I'm going to be an adult? Well, we have had to learn a lot of lessons during the first 19% of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration about being an adult, because we have seen behavior that we did not realize adults were capable of, and it taught us what we don't want to be. And so today, as we celebrate officially being 19% through 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration, I do what I always do when we meet this milestone, which is to remind us that we are here for a reason. There are detractors out there who try to make us feel as if we are defending ourselves in a cold civil war. And while they may be right, what is absolutely true is that we persevere and use what we are learning from this experience to better ourselves as we overcome the challenge of tolerating the behavior of people who are not interested in our well-being. If you look at the news media this week, for instance, you will see unending images of the leader of the Trump administration's anger about the success of the No King's Day manifesting itself in him tearing down the entire East Wing of the White House. Well, if we pay attention to it, will it still be standing or will it not? It will not, because it's already torn down. The more we let that information infiltrate our minds, the more it will tear us down, and that is not what we are here to do. We are here to be mindful, optimistic, and hopeful people who know that a better day will come, and that our resolve during this is an opportunity, however challenging it may be, to rise above the dust and asbestos being littered throughout the nation by the leader of the Trump administration. Let's continue to use our withdrawal from being constantly inundated with information to reclaim our mind and regain that time in order to put better energy out into the world for ourselves and for others who may not be as mindful, optimistic, and hopeful as we are. I am going to head into the kitchen right now to give my cat Stella her food and libation and continue my 19% celebration. We will both be ignoring the Trump administration.